Welcome to Show Me Casey Schools podcast. I am Nina. Excited today, joined by Danielle, our Director of School Navigation with Show Me Casey Schools, and a couple of my favorite people to observe in this space and community. We have some amazing parents and educators and advocates with us, Akeyla Walker and Amanda Walker Jackson.
Woo, yeah,
Great. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, these women wear so many hats.
I know. I'm like educator, advocate, parent, all the things.
Parent advisory board members, all of the above.
Right.
PLTI alums. Oh my goodness, the list goes on and on.
All the accolades. Well, today I wanted to talk a little bit about kindergarten readiness. We are currently recording this during the springtime. And so I know as we start rounding out in spring and in summer, families kind of start to think about prepping for the next school year, especially our friends who are entering kindergarten. Yes. I know Danielle gets calls from parents really freaking out about what kindergarten is going to look like. So we wanted to spend some time talking a little bit about that today and what that transition to kindergarten looks like. I'm going to start. Amanda, could you help us with understanding when we're talking about kindergarten readiness, what does that mean? Yeah. I think sometimes parents hear that and they don't really know like what that means.
Yes, that's a great question. I think a lot of the times parents think that kindergarten readiness is like students coming in and being able to read and spell and do all the things right away.
Yes. Immediately. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a process just like every other grade level. For me, kindergarten readiness is them coming in socially and emotionally ready. It takes a lot more grit and stretch for kinder. I think that they definitely need to come in with some foundational skills with letter recognition and things like that. But a lot of the things are built up while we're in kindergarten. You should come in with a foundation of like knowing some things, but it's not expected that you know them right away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's helpful. The reading thing is like really hard for parents. And I know like when my oldest was young, I was really obsessed with that. I was the one that fell victim to like the ABC mouse.
Right.
And stuff like that. Like, because I felt like she's got to know how to do this before she gets to kindergarten.
Yes.
So I know you talked about letter recognition. Akeyla, can you share with us, in addition to that, what are some things that students should know as they're entering in kindergarten?
So when I think about kindergarten readiness, I'm the same way. I'm a big advocate for social and emotional development. Obviously, kindergarten readiness encompasses physical development as well. I'm seeing a lot of kids struggling with the ability to have like strong fine motor skills. So that is where my mind is sitting right now. So having the ability to navigate, regulating their emotions, being able to share space with other people, and the ability just to do things independently. Going back to those fine motor skills, we have babies that are struggling with zipping, unzipping, going to the restroom on their own.
Okay, so those are some of the things that, and we'll get to this, but some of the things that parents can be working on at home.
Definitely.
Like myself, we're kind of jumping to like the academic side, but there's just some basic development, fine motor, gross motor skills, social emotional skills, I'm hearing you say, that we really want to make sure that we capture in before students are going into kindergarten. While we're on that, something that I have talked to all of you about recently is childcare, pre-K. That sort of thing.
So much talk.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Danielle always is in these pre-K conversations.
Well, some of that panic, though, that parents feel about kindergarten readiness is because it comes early and maybe they feel like the childcare provider that they're currently utilizing isn't doing enough, isn't preparing enough. And I'll it's very difficult to find childcare and or pre-K seats.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
The difference, what could be perceived differences depending on the circumstance, is another podcast episode. But I do think that I always remind families, and I feel like this goes into what you all are saying as well with the social emotional. We want kids to come in and kind of have a taste and be ready of what it means to be a group learner.
Yeah.
Especially for those students who have been staying at home with an individual caregiver, whomever that may be. They're all of a sudden going to be in the classroom and be one of 15 to 20 plus kids. And that can be intimidating. We want them to understand who the teacher is, you know, and how to ask for help or how to, you know, communicate as a part of that group, know what it looks like to go sit down on the carpet and follow directions. You know, it sounds really benign, but those pre-K experiences, even if they're in childcare centers, have such great benefit because of all of those reasons.
And the panic comes from the way that we as a society view education and what education is supposed to be at the pre-K level and in kindergarten. The big, like our pedagogical push is social and emotional development because of that. And so typically when kids are in an early childhood setting, childcare, preschool, you have parents assuming, because they're not educators and understand, that learning's not going on, but it certainly is.
Yeah.
We see the difference in kids that have experiences in childcare settings, preschool, when they come to kindergarten.
Right.
They stand out. If they have not had those experiences, you can tell.
What are some of those things that parents should look out for to know, like, okay, we're getting prepared in this daycare center or this pre-K program that we're in, to your point, because I think sometimes for parents, we kind of think like, oh, they're sitting down by themselves and trying to read a book, or they're, you know, trying to write their names, and sometimes really get stuck on that. Beyond those sorts of things, what kind of signals to parents like that we're on the path towards readiness for kindergarten?
I think like Akeyla spoke earlier, just seeing your child have that independence. Can they get themselves dressed? Can they brush their teeth? Do they do things on their own without prompting constantly? Can they independently do those things? Because those things transfer into the classroom. Like, we're not asking them to brush their teeth in the classroom, but we are asking them to sustain grit for a certain amount of time, to sit, to engage in a lesson, to sit for listening and learning content. So it is those type of things. Can they do those things? And those things are cultivated in a pre-K setting, in a daycare, in a mom and pop center, whatever you want to call it. If they're getting those experiences, it will, transfer over.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to sit and listen to a book being read is a skill that you need a student to be able to come in with. It's going to benefit not only them, the other students in the classroom, and you all as educators, being able to put their coat on to go outside for recess. I mean, those are the little things that I feel like we hear, kindergarten teachers talk about. And again, it seems so benign, but that's what's going to prep them. And then the letters and the numbers and the reading there's space for that to then be able to take off like lightning, you know?
Yeah. What are some of the things that parents should be looking out for when they're thinking about, is my student ready to transition to kindergarten or not? Because we have had conversations around like certain students that maybe could have benefited from that extra year in pre-K.
Yes.
Maybe weren't fully ready. What are some of those signs and things, in addition to like that independence, should we really be paying attention to and cluing in on that may be a signal that maybe we need to consider another year before transitioning to school?
I think also trusting your instinct. I was just talking to a parent, and her first reaction to a situation that we had was, I think he would have benefited from another year of preschool. And her mother talked her into it because he is academically strong, right? He can do his math in his sleep. He can read already, but he struggles to function in the classroom in a structured environment. And I feel like parents, atypical behavior, and you also understand if your child is not meeting those marks, whether it's social and emotional or academic. And so the parents need to trust their instincts first.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
trust parents to make that decision. Another thing is trusting child care workers, trusting preschool teachers. They do a lot of assessments. And some of it is just simply observations and documenting it through anecdotal notes, or just simply having conversations with parents and trying to make them aware of what's going on if they are in those settings. And then I think another thing is just, making sure that your kid can handle transitions. I'm having a hard time with a lot of babies this year in particular that they cannot handle transitions. It is really hard for them to go from one activity to the next. And it's standing out. I don't know why it's different this year, but transitions are hard for a lot of my kids this year. Going from one activity to the next, going from one place to the next place. They're struggling with
hard
it.
for the adults.
Yes.
Right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
I
So I'm
just was
sure
thinking about that earlier about third graders having transitional issues. So yes, I agree with Akeyla that parents are the first, line of is my child ready? Right. You do trust yourself. You know your children more than anybody else. But if you are a parent who may not have the confidence to make those decisions, reach out to your caregivers, reach out to, the people that are, taking care of your children, because they can guide you and let you know what is best. Seeing that kinder is not a requirement in the state of Missouri, I mean, it does. I didn't want to do that for my daughter in preschool. I let her go to kinder. She was not ready. Her teachers asked me to keep her back. But me being an educator, I'm like, no, she'll be all right. She'll get it. But socially, she was not ready. And she could have stayed back another year and would have been just fine. And I should have leaned into people, my daughter's teachers, instead of just believing that because I'm an educator, I know what's best for my child.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of those highlights tremendously. I do also, though, want to take an opportunity to acknowledge when maybe we need to seek an evaluation. Right? And it's a really difficult. That's hard to know. That's hard for parents to know, and it's hard for educators to know. There isn't always, and push back on me, please, like that, 100% gut check, right? Like sometimes we need some additional input. And if you feel like you're uncertain on readiness, or maybe you have some concerns, or like you said, maybe the child care provider or pre-K has brought up some concerns, then we also need to reach out to the school districts for evaluations, even if we're still in the midst of making a decision. And that may actually help guide that decision.
Yeah. That's good. So, speaking of assessments.
Yeah. Oof.
Most of our local schools do some sort of kindergarten readiness assessment as students are coming into kindergarten. I do want to note for families that those typically happen in the spring and over the summer.
Yeah.
Can you all talk a little bit about what you're gaining as an educator from those assessments?
Ooh, yeah.
You want to leave? I think the assessments give us a academic, outlook on what the child is capable of. Typically, the ones that I know we're familiar with at our school is very basic. So, whether a child can count to 10, recognize numbers to 10, be able to follow a conversation. It does give us some understanding of what the child is able to do, but it is not the full story. I would push for us to be able to sit down with families and actually talk to them, because the assessments are very basic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I feel like it's kind of like one-sided, because we're getting the information from like some of the preschools, but if that student didn't attend a preschool, or those type of things, we're getting kids from the community that may not have been assessed, and so we're blind when it comes to that. And then, like Akeyla said, it's not assessing all of the areas, and then it doesn't do a great job at giving us a picture of how this kid acts socially and emotionally. Right. And like we said, social emotional learning is the foundation of all other areas of learning.
I could do the rest of it.
Yes, if a student cannot sit down, they cannot read, they cannot do math. They have to be able to sit down and have the ability to sit and engage in an activity that they're not interested in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's really, really good.
And then
That's
we do
helpful.
the dial test
Yeah.
at the beginning for our incoming kindergartners, but we don't know them. And so kids aren't showing up the way that they need to, as if they would.
Because you're a stranger.
Exactly. Once
Yeah.
I build a relationship with them and I'm able to gain the real data that I need.
Yeah.
Other than that, it is just baseline for me.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I want to signal to families with that is like yes, we want to participate in those. We want to provide
Yes.
that data to the school and the teacher for the incoming students, but also don't stress. Because
Yes.
I've seen
Yes.
families really stress about it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be okay. And I do kind of want to transition a little bit and talk about families, because I know in some of my previous roles, I've had to do a lot of talking and coaching for families that are preparing to transition their student to kindergarten. Danielle, I know you do some of this
Yeah.
with the families you interact with, because I get it. It's your baby. It's their first time in, big kids school.
Right.
So it's a hard transition. But what can families do to prepare themselves? Because I think we talk a lot about, and I want to touch on that as well, preparing students, but parents. What do parents need to do to prepare themselves for that transition and for the time that their student is going to be in kindergarten?
Yeah, I made notes.
Yeah.
Because you know that I have mom brain, right? But I think that I want, put your plan together and think about, what this is going to look like. But a lot of it goes back to the basics and preparing yourself so that you are ready, so that, your kid is in the best situation. And it is basics. It's thinking about what time school starts, how long it's going to take to get there, or how you're getting there, what time you need to get up, all of the above. Those are the little things that are going to make you feel so much better about that transition. Because you're going to be prepared. From the emotional side of it, I mean, if you're me, then you need to have major inner dialogue and tell yourself that you're not allowed to cry until you're by yourself after but seriously though, right? I mean, I know that we can all smile about
the
it.
tears for the car.
But you need to, because again, one of the things we want families to do is get excited. We want them to have positive dialogue with their students. And I'm not trying to jump ahead. I'm sorry, Nina.
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Positive dialogue with your incoming kinders about school, naming the teacher by name and talking about their teacher at home. You're going to get to go see Miss Walker. Isn't that so exciting? I'm so happy for you. Getting excited about the backpack, trying it on, the new shoes, whatever it is that, that works for your family, that is part of that preparation. But then, also psyching yourself up a bit and understanding that first day is going to be emotional. Build in the time to be able to get the photo that you want, right? It is important. We want to capture those.
Before you come into the classroom.
Before you come into the classroom. Right, exactly. And then give your hugs and kisses, say your thank yous, and promptly remove yourself, and then go cry in your car with all the other new parents.
Yeah, I know some schools that will not allow families in the building that first week of school.
Yeah.
Just because of some of the things that they've had happen, and it's become, especially with kindergarten parents, it's just really hard to get some folks out of the building. And so the kid is crying, the parent is crying, and it's real dramatic. So it's okay, at the door, give your kiss, give your hug. We'll see you at 3:00.
Yes.
Well, that's a good point though, right? Prepare yourself by also knowing the protocols of your school.
Yeah.
Yes,
Everything
that's a big
from
one.
putting the school's phone number into your cell phone contact list. If your kid's riding the bus, downloading the app, or having transport, those are also those preparatory things that it is incumbent upon the caregiver or the parent to do those things. And understanding your school's protocol on pickup and drop off, and whether or not parents are coming into classrooms or not, that differs at every single building. I can't give you that information, right?
Right.
Go to the meet your teacher night.
Yes.
So important.
Yes, probably bring the supplies at the meet the teacher night.
Yeah.
There you
don't have to
go.
worry about
That's
that
right.
first
Yes.
day.
Hot
Yes,
tip.
right.
I feel like if we had a bell or a light or something, there it is.
But I love that you said prep yourself. I always tell teachers, read books. not teachers, parents, read books, get stuff like, what is it, Miss Kindergarten's first day of kindergarten?
Yeah.
Those type of things.
Building positive approaches to learning.
Yes, and if you're confident and positive, that flips onto the student, your scholar. So
or opposite.
Right.
You know? And it goes along with like creating the school profile of your choice and then going after those, like, well, of your dream.
Yeah.
Ideally. And then going after that. Because I think a lot of times, especially in kindergarten, you get in a situation where you're only looking at just academics, or you're only looking at if this school has before and after school, or this and a location.
Yes.
And I'm like, you really truly have to take into account all the things that you need. Because then once the school year gets started, it's all this list of things that we're not,
Oh, yeah.
you know, we're not able to do, or we're not doing, but you really I didn't know you were looking for that,
Right.
you know, and it's above me.
Right.
Yes.
I'm only in control of my classroom,
Right.
you know, and I see a lot of kindergarten families in particular are slighted, you know, once they choose a school because they're really not, they don't know the real questions to ask.
Right.
That's
when
good.
choosing a school.
And we've talked about that some in some of our previous podcasts too, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I've previously, you know, been giving tours to families before, especially, you know, our incoming new friends, because it's their first experience, right? And so sometimes we get really caught up on things that look pretty and this
the
worked
aesthetic of the
great for my
building.
neighbor or my friend, and so I want to bring my kid here. And so, you know, when we're talking about things like the curriculum and the classroom size, especially classroom size, is one thing that
I'm dealing with it this year.
I'm really like drove home for families. Think about that, like, because neighbor Susie might have been okay in this classroom of 30, but that may not be good for Johnny.
Right.
And that's okay. But we need to think about that, to your point, when we're thinking about what type of school environment our students need to be in. And so consider, I know like having community is really important. I do think that's important, but I really want to stress that like what works for one student is not the best option for another. And I know that it can get really complex and sometimes overwhelming having so many options, but that is one of the benefits of having the landscape that we do, is we get to have a little bit of choice and option around what works for our student and where we're going to enroll them. We dropped some gems around preparing parents and students, but any other tips or advice that you would like to give families as they're working towards this transition and getting their students kindergarten ready?
One thing I was thinking while the ladies were talking is that it's a misconception that, you know, we play all day, you know, and I think that what bothers me is people like, oh, they play all day, but then they have the expectation that their kid is reading. So what do you want? Do you want them to have social emotional experiences, or do you want them to be academically ready? Right. And so I think what one of these ladies brought up is knowing the curriculum, knowing what is happening, because it's going to look different. Kindergarten is rigorous. And as my sister and I both said, we have been early childhood pre-K teachers for a lot of years, and we've been in this K through 5 setting for about 3 or 4 years now. And it is a huge difference in the two, just from pre-K to kindergarten. Absolutely. So I always said last year I wanted the parents to walk a day in their kindergarten shoes because they are wore out. Yeah. They are going through a rigorous experience every day, and it is nothing like pre-K. Yeah. They go from having 90 minutes of recess to having barely 30. Yeah. Okay. And then they're having center time where they have no center time. So it's those type of questions I think that parents should warrant when they are looking for places to send their kids for kinder, because there is a huge difference in those two areas.
Yeah.
And I think talking to the teacher, that is the biggest thing for me. I'm even right now, we're in April, and I'm having parents ask me questions, and I'm like, I've never led with that. I've never been that person. I'm one of those people, I lead with what my classroom will be like. If you would have asked me this in September, I would have told you no then, right? But it's a lot of parents I'm noticing is they're coming into school with their school trauma as well. once you're an advocate for your kid, you got to drop that, you know, and stop looking at this teacher as the teachers that you've had in the past.
Yeah,
Grill me. As a teacher, I want you to grill me. I want you to ask the questions that you need, because that's the only way I can serve you and your family. When I see the person I see myself as in the classroom is, I'm not only working for children, I'm working for you too.
Yeah.
So I feel like those are the opportunities. This is the time for you to build those relationships, you know? And then so when you're going to first, second, and third grade, you're building up the confidence for yourself as a parent to, again, you know, advocate for that kid in those spaces.
Yeah.
It starts now. And I have a lot of parents who hold back. And I'm like, this is the time that you exercise those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's helpful. Okay, we are going to wrap it up. But before we do, we talked about this already a little bit, but I like to go ahead and make sure we have it all tied with a bow for folks. So in terms of like skills and things like that to work on, can you all call out some fine motor skills and social emotional skills that are really good that families should be working on as they're preparing for kindergarten?
Yeah.
Give them all the fine motor experiences they can. Peeling tape, stickers, Play-Doh, Legos, all of those types of things, because those things build fine motor development. It does not have to be a kid sitting there with pen and paper or pencil and paper. It could be a paintbrush,
Chalk.
chalk.
Absolutely. Transitions, we were talking about transitions earlier. This is something that you can work on at home. It'll probably make your transitions at home better. And a way to do that in anticipation for school is to talk about, oh, you're going to get to go to lunch. You're going to get to go to art, music, or PE. You're going to get to go to recess. It's a great way to do anticipatory explanations for transitions.
I love that.
Yeah.
Please have them writing their name.
There we go.
Writing their name. I mean, even if they can't form all the letters, let them practice. Just let them practice writing their names.
That's good.
That's good.
I like it.
Well, thank you all so much. I
Yeah.
hope that this podcast is helpful for families as they're preparing for that transition and thinking about what that's going to look like and how they need to prepare themselves and their students. I appreciate you all for joining us today. For our listeners and viewers, you always know that you can contact Show Me KC Schools and we can support you on your journey, supporting your students with their educational journey. We'll have show notes available for different resources that can help you as you're preparing for kindergarten and as you're searching for schools. And we will see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Show Me KC Schools is committed to providing you with vital information that supports you while you support your child on their educational journey. Connect with us on social media at SMKCS and on YouTube at Show Me KC Schools and on all your favorite podcast platforms.